Hello everyone and welcome to Project Y Screen 2021's Q&A session. We are here today with Anna Kenrick, Artistic Director of Y Dance, and Natalia Barua, who is our choreographer this year for Project Y Screen. We're going to be asking lots of questions that have been put together from our participants. We are going to just learn a little bit more about our choreographer and artistic director, and hopefully find out some helpful tips along the way. So the first question is just to find a little bit more about you as a person before we go into everything about dance. And the first question is, what motivates you? So I'm going to hand that over to Anna first.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. And hello, everybody. Okay, what motivates me? I'm guessing that's in the frame of to get out of bed each morning. My work, I know it sounds twee, but my work is extremely important in my life. So I find work and the team that I work with and the work I am very lucky and get to do every day of my life, very motivating. Also my family, I have two small boys, they motivate me by physically getting me out of bed every morning. And also just I live near the beach now, so going down to the beach on a very sunny day for my runs in the morning, that is a great motivation to carry on with my day and connect to nature first thing in the morning. And I'll hand over to Natalia.
Hi everyone, thank you. From what Anna said, I'm going to continue with that. Nature would be a motivator for me, and particularly the weather. So I'm probably the most motivated in spring and summer. So getting out while the weather's good is a huge motivator to me. Even if I'm exhausted, I'll get myself out quite early if the sun is shining, which can also be quite a bad thing, because if I'm recovering from an injury or anything where I actually probably should be staying at home, I'll still be too motivated by the thought of getting a tan. I just like the sun. Otherwise, yeah, people around me in my life, like my son motivates me because I have to get up very early, but he's a huge motivation for the day. And otherwise, more work specific, the people I end up lucky enough to work with, the participants and communities and other professional artists that I'm lucky enough to work with motivate me. And in a broader sense, other artists motivate me in my work. And on a larger international perspective, artists, historic and contemporary, motivate me in my practice on a daily basis.
Thank you both. I think that resonates with what we were talking about earlier in our conversation with the participants, when they were saying energy of others really helps sort of keep you going and keep you motivated. So thank you for that. The next question is we're going to go back. We're going to go back to your earliest memory. So the question that was asked is, what is your earliest memory of dance?
Shall I go? Yeah. I suppose I'll take that as the earliest memory of me being involved in dance, and that is probably I joined the youth dance company at Dance City when my first experience of what I've ended up working in for the last 25 years, youth dance. When I was about 9, and my earliest memory, we did a performance, a creative dance performance about getting out of bed and dreams and nightmares, I think, at a circus tent in Gateshead. And I remember performing at that and rehearsing, and that's where I met some of my lifelong friends who in my mid-40s, I'm still friends with from my youth dance days. So that's my earliest memory of being involved in youth dance practice.
My earliest memory of dance, I'd want on a more kind of personal level, would be making up dances from a really young age with my cousins. So that's all that we'd done at the weekend. That was our priority, to make up dances, very quickly show them to our parents and our family in the living room. That was the main basis of my weekends. Otherwise, I think even before that, the earliest memory of a more like class-based environment was being sent to the local council's tap and ballet classes, and doing the quite classic good toes, naughty toes. Like, I really have this memory of that exercise of flexing and stretching my feet. And there's a newspaper cutting, they took a photo of me in the dance group. I must have been about 4, and everyone's in this beautiful positions, and I'm just like, and I think that trajectory for the rest of my kind of dance career has continued in that way of like, yeah, I wasn't really following a codified technique and struggled with that. But something a bit more contemporary and free continued my journey. And it's the same forever. That's the earliest memory for me.
I'm sure I've seen like a card that has that image on it.
Yeah, I've most likely been made into a meme somewhere.
It's those are the best moments. Okay, so the next question is just to find out a little bit more about your journey. So how did you get to where you are now? And I'm going to go with Natalia first.
So I struggled to try and kind of place what dancing more like as a style that I wanted to focus on. So within my very small town that I lived in, I went to a dance school. I was doing quite competitive disco freestyle, Latin, rock and roll, very competitive dancing that had me going up and down the country kind of every weekend. And it was like costumes, high energy performance, lots of injuries, like numbers, people screaming out your number from the side of the studio, like glitter, gems, expensive costumes that my mum couldn't afford. Like, that was the world I was in. And as I kind of went into my late teens, it started not to feel like me anymore. And I was more into hip hop and more urban dance forms. And I started to go down to London a bit more to take class, and found myself in a position where I had to essentially decide your future after doing your A-levels. So I thought that I wanted to do musical theatre. And after being accepted into a musical theatre school in London, realised that that isn't what I wanted to do. And then realised at the time, from what I knew in the bubble that I was living in my small town, that I thought, okay, the next option is contemporary dance at uni. I hadn't done any contemporary dance whatsoever before. But then ended up training and studying, doing my BA in performance dance at York St John Uni. I don't think the course exists anymore, but I was just really lucky as part of the cohort that had some really brilliant lecturers who are still artists in practice now, based mainly up in Leeds, and worked with some really wonderful people. And we were lucky enough to keep exchanging between Yorkshire dance and the scene that was going on up there as well. So it's quite an eclectic and diverse course that concentrated quite heavily on choreography. And I knew upon leaving that choreography was something more that I wanted to do. And started making my own work kind of as soon as I left uni, and moved to Spain quite quickly when in my early 20s, and found myself in a position of making work for like non-theatre spaces. So I was more interested in interdisciplinary collaboration. So I was working with kind of video artists, digital artists, projection artists, and musicians, just to experiment and collaborate, and had quite a lot of confidence in just sharing anything and everything at that time. And it tended to be more in gallery spaces. So I think the site-specific thing led me to be more interested in non-theatre based dance, and then just so happened to meet a filmmaker one day and decided to try something together. And I think after making my first piece of work for video for the screen in 2012 was when I started to find out more about the medium of screen dance, and realized there was so much more to it than I understood or had any experience of. And from then on, continued to make my own work, and went on to training in different kind of places in Europe. I realized that screen dance was slightly more popular or funded in other countries in Europe, and I got a Lisa Ullman traveling scholarship, which enabled me to travel and kind of network within the field of screen dance and build up my knowledge and continue making work in that field specifically. I guess always alongside that, from the beginning, I was working as a teacher and in participation. So alongside my making, I was working in community settings, in groups, and building up my practice with a big interest in inclusive practice and accessibility, and was really lucky enough to work for, you know, many organizations now down in London and up here in Scotland now. And my big focus has been work with young people, children and young people of all different kind of groups and in different settings. And now a lot of the work that I make is with children and young people. So both of my practices, which at one time were quite on two different tracks, are now starting to come together a little bit more. Huge answer. Does that take us up to today?
It took us where, I think you mean you've answered two questions that I have.
Okay, sorry.
But we now know how you got into screen dance. But I think it was a really good way of just explaining your journey. So I think we'll find out a little bit more about Anna and how she is where she is now.
So I'll answer in a similar way to Natalia. So I, as I mentioned, started off a youth dance company when I was younger. I had the privilege of living near in Newcastle, near Dance City, which had a strong youth dance group. But I also went to a more traditional dance school on a Saturday morning and did ballet, tap and modern jazz and all my exams. And so I had the opportunity to do more technical development, a bit like Natalia was saying, but also opened my eyes to creative movement and contemporary dance in the youth dance company. Also did the musical theatre elements at the theatre in Newcastle, had an amateur dramatic, so me and my friends did all the dancing and all the pantomimes and all the shows, which was great. So I basically lived at the time theatre, an opera house when I from the ages of 9 to 18, and then I went to do the foundation course at the Northern School of Contemporary Dance. My plan was just to do a year, because then I wanted to go into more commercial dance, because that's kind of, as I mentioned, was where me and all my friends had more of our experience. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I'd actually applied to do law and feminist studies at Liverpool John Moores and had a place to go and do law, but decided at 18 that if I wanted to be a dancer, that's probably best to do that first and then go back to law. So still waiting to do that law degree. And so went to Northern School to do a foundation, fell in love with contemporary dance at Northern and ended up doing my BA there and staying there for 3 years. After graduation, went down to London, spent a few years in London working in independent projects, many years as a waitress. Did a lot of work with the cheerleading academy and set up cheerleaders. So I worked in different multifaceted in different skilled areas. All of those are transferable still throughout my career. And now as a mum, all those waitressing skills are coming well handy. And then at 24, 25, I got a job with Ludus Dance and Education Company up in Lancaster, who are actually the company that I wanted to work for primarily. So that was a big dream of mine. As Natalia mentioned, I always knew I wanted to perform and be a contemporary dancer, but education was a strong passion for me. That's what I focused on at university. I focused at Northern, I focused on how working with children with a range of disabilities was my primary focus. So I always knew that education and working with young people and using dance as a tool for learning was always something that I wanted to do. I didn't just want to perform. And Ludus were a company at the time that were kind of leading the field in terms of performing and using dance to educate and work with children. So I moved to Lancaster at 24, 25 and worked with them for 6 years on tour, doing different performances and education work across the UK and abroad. And then at 30, I came up to Scotland. We toured here quite a lot, so I knew quite a lot of the organisations. And got a job at Y-Dance, and then that has been me for the last 14 years, which is quite scary, but in different roles. I started as a teaching artist with the company, and then moved on to projects director, so was in charge of a few of the projects, and at the time became one of the choreographers for Project Y. And then when my predecessor left, I went for the artistic director role, which I got, and I've been there in that position for I think about 8 years. So yes, that is how. So I think I always joke, but I think I actually am the only person in the world who spent her entire career working in dance and young people since the age of 24 when I joined Ludus. So it is my focus, and now at Y-Dance, I obviously the choreographer for the National Young Dance Company of Scotland and Project Y. So I create 2 bits of work with those companies each year, and then commissions. So this year we're doing Take Flight, which is another project we're working on and creating a piece for that. So I get a chance to do a lot of strategic work and development work. I have a fabulous team, which Lindsay is part of, Natalia was part of, and also get to make and create, which is it's uses every part of my brain that is possible, my job, which is exactly how I like it.
Thank you. I feel like Natalia answered the next question, but I might just reframe it. So the original question is what made you choose a career in screen dance specifically? But for us to learn a little bit more, is like what drew you towards screen dance, or what initiated the jump to screen dance?
I think it probably just was a genuine interest in the medium, and like I said, it was site-specific work that I was really quite interested in, but genuinely didn't have a clue as to how I would generate audiences, like permissions. I didn't get all of that, and quite frankly wasn't willing to get all of that because I just wanted to make work quickly if I seen a space that I was interested in. I think there was something in my first experience of making the work Occupational Hazard in 2012 in Barcelona that there was something about, quite honestly, is the ability to edit myself. So not only in an artistic sense of the choreography that goes on in editing, but then also literal being able to cut out the parts that I didn't like. You know, I guess that I found myself, I think I spoke to some of the participants earlier about this, that I found myself, because I was performing for some choreographers after I left uni. And at first, what gave me a lot of joy performing on stage actually ended up giving me quite a lot of anxiety and a huge amount of fear around being watched in a live sense. So I felt more in control with the medium. And I think I've just continued to enjoy the aspect of it, but probably less from a more paranoid point now and more of a just enjoying the art for what it is. But I have actually gone back in my work over the past couple of years. I had me and my partner, who I work with a lot in artistic productions, we had a more of a research, practice-based research project to see what it would mean for screen dance to be placed in more of a performance environment. So how to interact with live performance as well as screen work and installation design. So I have started actually to go back to a bit more live performance myself. But I find myself more comfortable when I'm choreographing and working with people for their performances that are live than I do performing myself. I feel a lot more comfortable in front of the camera. And yeah, for me, it's just like, okay, I'm in a place in life where I'd rather be comfortable with what I'm doing than pushing myself to do something that I'm not comfortable with.
You found a passion.
And that's a big difference, I suppose, for the young people watching who are experiencing screen dance, I suppose, more over the last 18 months than I think any young dancers have ever done in the whole entire history of screen dance. Natalia, as she's mentioned, the control element of screen dance, you can control what the viewer, the audience is seeing, really, down to the finest detail. Natalia can edit it so she knows exactly what is being shown, opposed to when you work for stage. Whereas on if you're doing a traditional fourth wall kind of performance, then, you don't know where the audience looking. The audience could spend the whole time looking at one dancer for the whole show. They, transfixed by one dancer, or, you have far less control creating a work for stage. So it's a really defining point that Natalia's brought up about the difference between screen dance, making work for screen, making work for a theatre, which is then again very different to making work on site or outside. Yeah. Off on a tangent there, Lindsay, I'll hand back to you.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, have the same question for yourself. I mean, I don't know if you dabbled a little bit in screen dance over the last year.
No, I mean, my role as a choreographer for the company is defined by some of the projects we run, but obviously within that we have, creative autonomy or agency to, to drive those projects in whichever way we want. I've traditionally made work project-wise, traditionally up until this point, be a theatre-based project. So and National has, because National perform in other people's events. We don't have our own night of, for many reasons. So we have fitted the work that we need to create into what the context is, which has been theatre. I have created outdoor work for the 2014, 2018 games, for European Championship gymnastics. So for 4-5 large sporting events, I was asked to create outdoor work. So, which is different, as Natalia will tell you, from site responsive as well. It was work to be explored outside rather than for a particular site. But screen dance is one area that I have learned a lot of skills in the last 18 months, self-taught skills, and through different projects, but self-taught and also taught, by the young people that we've worked with on 2 Hot House projects, who have been fantastic young choreographers. So it has been a big learning journey, screen dance, for me. And this year coming, I just done some work with a national youth company, so we to finish off them. So we will be putting small screen dance performance together, and we created a live Zoom performance which was great creatively, to create a performance on Zoom using the technicalities of Zoom and using their own space and place. That was a real challenge. And I'll also be creating an indoor work and an outdoor work for the coming national company as well. So I think what this pandemic has taught me and the company is that, shaking things up, changing the way different projects work and the experiences the young people can get through Y Dance is brilliant. And we will be taking a lot of these new projects and learning forward.
And every day is a learning day, because as
Dance,
saying, you're doing screen dance, but you're doing it on the medium of online. Totally different to probably how you used to work in, Natalia. So we'll go on to the next question just for time. The next question is about advice. What advice would you give someone who wanted to start out as a professional dancer or choreographer? I will go with Natalia. Or I could go with Anna if you want.
No, that's okay. I was having issues unmuting myself there, not on purpose. I think mine's going to be more about the answer that I would, if I could give one answer, it would more be around staying true to what it is that you want to make, and not letting anything, any context, any setting, any person, like, alter that. yes, be challenged by like feedback, of course, and responses, but stay true to what it is that you genuinely want to make and the core of your idea. Because I think when you spend your time worrying a bit more about who's going to see it, where they're going to see it, is it as exciting as this choreographer, that choreographer, why doesn't my work look like that or feel like that, or why didn't as many people come to mine, the joy is taken away. And yeah, what are you in this for? So when you truly know like what it is that you want to make and you stick to that, you'll find the joy in the process. That's certainly been my experience. And the product, yeah, it's fantastic to have. But for me, it's been get as much out of the process as well as enjoying what you have at the end of it.
I totally echo what Natalia's just said. I think over the last far too many years, I've learned that more and more, that you enjoy the process, enjoy the ride, because that's the most fabulous bit. And what comes out in the end is a product of time and place and how you were feeling and how the dancers were feeling and where we were in time and space in terms of the greater context of the world, right down to what you were experiencing as a human being. And it is what it is at that time, and don't judge it a week later, a day later. Think of the wonderful process you got, and especially because Natalia works more with young people, but also still with professionals. I only create work with young dancers. I haven't created work with professionals for a long time. And, you know, for me, yes, it's about making a great piece of art, but at the same time, it's about allowing these young artists, especially at National and Project Y, young artists, young people, young humans to develop as artists, creators, performers, technicians, but fundamentally human beings who are going to be a more positive force in the world that we live in. So, you know, yes, it's a great bit of art, but at the end of the day, if they all come out as better, feeling better about themselves, that's more of a priority for me than any view that anybody has about the end product. And I have forgotten the question.
Yeah, answered it. The question was just the advice you would give to.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, no, that yeah. So my advice would be exactly stay true, but more, I suppose, more practical. Take every opportunity. Yeah. We've both found our way over, you know, numbers of years, but as a student and as a young professional, do not say no to anything unless you've got a really valid reason. You know, if there's a screen dance project, you know, go and try it, recite responsive, you know, try and get as much experience as a 21, 22-year-old artist so that you can experience everything before you decide that, yes, okay, this is really where I want to go. Yeah, because until you've experienced everything, the rich opportunities there are in the dance sector and across the UK, and as Natalia mentioned, particularly in Europe, you can't really make an informed choice of where you want to place yourself unless you've experienced it. So get out there and be your most curious and brave self. Yeah, you know, it's a big sector, but especially and it's quite connected. But yeah, try and take on every opportunity. Be brave and curious.
Thank you so much. So that leads us nicely into the next one, where you're saying how you may have found your way. Has your choreography or style changed as you've gained more life experience and experience as a dancer choreographer? So you're talking about trying to gain as much experience as possible, Anna. Was there a point in where it changed or your thinking changed?
Oh yeah, my process has completely changed. If I think back to I can document it as Natalia mentioned the other day we were talking. I also have every notebook I've ever had written for the last 20 years. So I have a lot of notebooks. So I can go back, but I used to heavily plan. So because I've always worked in education, as an education teaching artist, Lindsay or Vera, you need to plan. You need to plan what you're going to do for your group, whoever you're working with, so they get the best learning experience, the best artistic experience that they can. But that's not necessarily the craze to great art. Being in the unknown is a really scary place, and I have come to love that place, and I used to hate it. So I used to plan exactly what I was going to do with my dancers, but see the piece in my head and create to the plan that I was going, which left very little unknown or risk taking in the studio. Yeah, because I'd almost preset what I wanted. Yeah, so now I start with an idea, a feeling, a piece of art, a moment in time that is just, I need to use my art, use my dance, use my work to kind of come to terms with what's happening maybe outside. And then the rest is found in the process. I trust the process, that wherever we start, we will come to a beautiful ending, whatever that may be, which is relevant to time, place, and space. I also used to work a lot by myself. I now create all of the work that I work on with my director, Philippa Clark, who is the director who now works on National and Project Y pieces and other pieces that the company do. So having a co-collaborator has been a brilliant development in my career. And just to round it up nicely where I began, Philippa and I became best friends at Youth Dance Company at Dance City when we were 9. So we were brought together in the youth dance world, and now we are co-collaborators. So yeah, being comfortable with the unknown and being brave to take risks and dive into the process and trust the process is what I've learned in the last 20 years.
Thank you. Natalia?
Would you mind just repeating the question again?
So the question was, has your choreography or style changed as you've gained more experience in life or experience as a dancer choreographer?
Probably on a more literal level, I'd say my dancing that is performative is more pedestrian, to be really like literal about it. And I think that probably comes from a really bad injury I sustained in 2014, and how that's changed my relationship to my body and my relationship to training, and therefore potentially less training, and therefore that then has an impact on how I'm moving my body for performance or the camera or whatever it is that I'm making. But then funnily enough, I don't find myself doing that when I'm working in participation with young people. That's when I'm actually pushing myself at a physical limit, like to really go full out, so to speak, virtuosic dancing, because yeah, I'm there in an environment where it feels more appropriate. Whereas say for my performance work for myself, I'm happy and more comfortable in my skin now, that with a movement that's probably not maybe 10-15 years ago I would have probably said that's not really dancing. But now I'm like, yeah, I'm happy with movement over dancing potentially, or dancing and movement, and it all being valid. So I don't think I've ever thought about that, so it's actually really nice to have that as a bit of a provocation. I think I'm going to take that away as well. It's like, how much have things changed in my work? I mean, I think, yeah, just as years go on, the more training you do, the more other artists you're around, the more experience you have, you just change organically, like how comfortable in a room that you are. But I still find myself like that, to go think about the point that Anna said around planning. Like, I love planning, and you need to plan when you're working in with young people, community or professional settings, whatever it is. I like planning, but I've always been quite okay and comfortable with the fact that things don't always go to plan. But I still find myself, even after like years of experience, I'd much rather have a plan in front of me and had time to process what it is I'm going to do before I walk into a room. Was maybe the assumption is, right, that artist has been working with young people for a lot of time, let's just shove them in a room and they know what they're doing straight away. No, I still need that time. I still need those notebooks. I still take those notebooks out on a regular basis. Like, okay, what's all the things that are right here for this group and moment in time? And I'm drawing on things that I done 10, 15 years ago, and some things that I done like last week. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, just to clarify, that's exactly how I work. But in terms of I have no idea what the final pieces were. So we plan. So I think, you know, speaking probably for both of us, we plan what's going in, what we're going to work with our dancers, you know, what we're going to do in the session. But rather than trying to plan the outcome of the task, we plan the tasks. And yeah, I mean, I've still got some, you know, age-old tasks that I love because they always create great movement and, you know, ways of working, but actually trying to plan, okay, I need movement like this to go in this section because this section is going to be about that. That's what I've let go of. That's the unknown. The piece will organically create itself by giving the dancers great tasks, great provocations, physically, mentally, using text, speaking, you know, connecting with each other. And the product of what they create in the studio or wherever we're working and how that comes together is unknown, opposed to in the early career where I can kind of, well, I'll have a section where they're all in a diagonal line and they all do this. Yeah, that might be a diagonal line, but I don't pre-plan as much as I used to. But it's different processes. For Project Y, as Natalia's doing this year, I have 5 days to create a 15-minute piece for theatre. So that requires a bit more pre-thought in terms of what the product could be, because you have to have a very short time to get the costumes and everything together, whereas the pieces I create with National are over 10 months. 6 months, but weekends. So I have much more time to reflect, digest, assimilate what's happened, and then, you know, start planning for the next weekend and where we need to go next. But yeah, so it's keeping it every process, trying to be flexible and respond to who you're working with in the studio and the process that's needed there. And as Natalia said, the older we get, the more experienced we are, because we've got many more tools in our back of our brain that we can pull on for any emergency or any different type of process that happens.
Yeah, that was a way to say it's a meaty question.
It's a good question.
I was thinking, I was like, you're gonna dig deep for that answer, and it was good because even the answers complemented each other and also shed light on different things. And I think it's about flexibility, because I'm thinking for myself how I would answer that, and I think you're constantly flexible. Even if it's small, you won't notice the big changes until you realize there's a change. So yeah, no, I think
Natalia touched on this, as I've got older, I care less about what people think of the work I create, and I care less about other people's thoughts, only the dancers I'm working with and the team.
I potentially dipped in and out of that depending on where I've been in life, and also whether how long I've been in a location because I've moved around quite a lot. But yes, in general, yeah, I'm more comfortable in my skin, and therefore everything else that goes on in terms of who I am as an artist and a person. Yeah. But maybe I've noticed dips in my confidence depend if I'm a new person in a new place.
Thank you for sharing that, guys. The last one is nice and positive for our last one. I mean, it's all been positive, but this one is, what's your favourite thing about working in the dance industry?
Oh,
I could see your face and you're like, where should I go with this one?
Your favourite colour? Favourite. I mean, I think I've had this all my career. I remember being in a studio with Ludus when I was about 24, and we were doing some crazy experimental task. And I remember lying there thinking, oh my goodness, I get paid to do this. That's crazy. I think we were being super silly and naughty for whatever reason and doing really extreme crazy things in the studio. And I think that's what I'm my favorite part of my job is. Every day, well, I have a fabulous team that I work with, which I'm always very grateful for, the artists and educators who work at Y Dance and all the staff, but that I get to teach contemporary move around and improvise and be silly and have fun and play. I'm 45 this year. I get to play as part of my job every day and get paid for it. And I think that's the favorite bit about my job, and work with fabulous young artists who teach me things, not only about Zoom every day, but teach me things about myself, my practice, humanity. And I get the gift of working with young people, which is my favorite part of my job. Natalia.
Yeah, resonate with a lot of what Anna said. It's like, I have those moments all the time, like, am I genuinely being paid for this? This is so great. Like, it's hard work. Like, it doesn't take away that how the work ethic and how hard it is, how rigorous it can be. But yeah, there's just so much joy in it. And I think the basic act of dance, like the moving and dancing, we all know it's good for us. It's good for us as human beings. And therefore that has always impacted the rest of my life and me as a human, because I'm a moving human quite a lot of the time. And yeah, like the communities and the individuals that I'm lucky enough to have worked with and still continue to work with, it's constantly grounding. And yeah, you learn things about yourself and about the world and the evolving world, via those experiences. Like, that's the biggest joy, that I've worked with so many groups of people and so many individuals with so many different journeys, but kind of all in the room to celebrate one type of joy. Yeah. Thank you.
So that was our Q&A. That was our last question. If any of the dancers or the participants have any more questions, we've run out of time just now, but if you would like them answered, just send them to myself and we'll get Natalia and Anna to answer them and make sure that that's given to you. But I would just like to thank Anna and Natalia for being part of our Q&A today. I'll do the round of applause. I'm sure everyone watching is doing it at home, and who was they watch the screen. And thank you very much.